At Camp Pendleton, they all saw the same thing. A woman in Navy uniform, silently taking notes while senior officers discussed classified operations. Just another staffer. When the Marine general decided to have his fun at her expense, asking for her call sign with a smirk, nobody expected her answer to freeze every man in the room. 2 words changed everything. What happened next revealed the true cost of underestimating someone based on appearances alone. A story about recognition that comes too late, sacrifice that goes unseen, and respect that must be earned the hard way. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you appreciate stories about unsung heroes, consider subscribing. More remarkable true stories are coming your way. The fluorescent lights of Camp Pendleton's Joint Operations Center cast harsh shadows across the faces of 24 officers. They sat around a large oval table, laptops open, papers spread before them, discussing the upcoming joint operation in the Strait of Hormuz. Commander Lysandra Evershaw occupied the last seat along the wall, almost invisible in her standard Navy uniform with minimal insignia. She wrote in a small black notebook, her handwriting precise and economical. Brigadier General Declan Hargrove's voice dominated the room. 6'3" with silver hair cropped close to his scalp, he commanded attention the way some men commanded armies, with absolute certainty in his authority. The intelligence suggests increased naval activity near the strait, he said, stabbing a finger at the map displayed on the screen. If we're going to maintain freedom of navigation, we need a show of force, not diplomats, not sanctions, Marines. Several officers nodded, others kept their expressions carefully neutral. Lysandra made another note without looking up. Sir, Lieutenant Bellamy Winters from Naval Intelligence ventured, satellite imagery suggests the increased activity might be defensive posturing rather than... I've been dealing with these people for 20 years, Lieutenant, Hargrove cut him off. They only understand strength. Your satellite images don't capture intent. Winters glanced briefly toward Lysandra, then back at his papers. Yes, sir. Lysandra noted the dismissal without reaction. She'd seen it countless times, valuable intelligence ignored in favor of preconceived notions. Her pen moved steadily across the page. Commander Avery, Hargrove continued, turning to a Navy SEAL officer. I want your assessment of insertion points along this coastline. Commander Avery began detailing potential landing zones, their advantages and vulnerabilities. Lysandra noticed an error in his terrain assessment, but kept silent, her eyes flickering occasionally to Lieutenant Winters, who had also noticed the mistake, but said nothing after his earlier rebuke. The briefing continued for another hour. Lysandra's phone vibrated once in her pocket. She finished her current note before discreetly checking it under the table. The message came from an unlisted number. Nomad confirms. Pattern matches 2019. Her expression never changed. She deleted the message, tucked the phone away, and resumed her notes. When the meeting finally broke, officers filed out in groups of 2s and 3s. Lysandra gathered her materials with unhurried precision. Commander, Lieutenant Winters approached hesitantly. I noticed you caught that error about the Eastern Ridge topography. It wasn't relevant to correct it at that moment, she replied, her voice quiet but clear. Right, Winters nodded, looking slightly disappointed. Well, there's another briefing tomorrow on the 2019 incident. Given your background in intelligence assessment, you might want to attend. Lysandra paused, studying him. I'll consider it, Lieutenant. Thank you. Her apartment was 15 minutes from the base, a 1-bedroom unit with minimal furniture. No photographs on the walls, no mementos, except for a small collection of foreign coins arranged neatly on her nightstand. She placed her notebook in a locked drawer and changed into running clothes. The scar across her shoulder blade caught briefly in the mirror's reflection, a jagged line that disappeared beneath her sports bra. She turned away without examining it and headed out for her evening run. Dawn found her on the empty beach, running steady miles as the sun broke over the Pacific. Her routine never varied, 5 miles each morning, regardless of weather or circumstance. The familiarity of physical exertion grounded her in a way nothing else could. Back in her apartment, showered and dressed in her uniform, she reviewed her notes from the previous day's briefing. Lieutenant Winters had been right about the satellite imagery, and General Hargrove had been wrong to dismiss him so quickly. Poor intelligence assessment cost lives. She knew this better than most. The 2019 briefing was scheduled for 900 hours. Lysandra arrived 15 minutes early to find Lieutenant Winters already there, arranging papers at the front of the room. "Commander," he nodded, seeming genuinely pleased to see her. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "You mentioned 2019, she replied simply. "Yes," he hesitated. "We've identified a new terrorist cell operating in the same region where the rescue mission failed 4 years ago. I thought your analytical perspective might be valuable." General Hargrove entered before she could respond, followed by his executive officer and 3 Marine captains. The room filled quickly after that. "Let's get started," Hargrove announced without preamble. "Lieutenant Winters, bring us up to speed." Winters stood at attention. "Sir, we've identified a new cell operating in the Zagros mountain region, using similar tactics to the group that took our personnel hostage in 2019. Intelligence suggests they may be planning another kidnapping operation targeting American contractors in the region." "This is why we need real operators in the field," Hargrove interjected, "not analysts shuffling papers in air-conditioned rooms. If we'd had better human intelligence in 2019, we wouldn't have lost that extraction team." Lysandra made a note without looking up. Her pen paused briefly, then continued. "We've prepared detailed files," Winters continued, gesturing to an aide who began distributing folders marked "Eyes Only" to the senior officers. To Hargrove's visible annoyance, Lysandra received one as well. She opened it carefully. Inside were satellite images of a compound nestled in rocky terrain, thermal scans showing human activity, and transcripts of intercepted communications. Her eyes lingered on a topographical map of the surrounding mountains. "The terrain makes conventional insertion challenging," Winters explained. "The ridgeline here provides excellent visibility for sentries, and the approach from the north is too exposed." Lysandra spoke without looking up from the file. "The southeastern approach offers better cover. The satellite image doesn't show it clearly, but there's a seasonal creek bed that provides concealment for a small team." The room went quiet. General Hargrove stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "And what mountain ranges have you climbed, Lieutenant Commander?" he asked, his tone making it clear he expected no answer of consequence. "Enough to recognize a viable approach, sir," she replied evenly, returning her attention to the file. Hargrove's jaw tightened, but he moved on. "Commander Avery, your assessment of insertion options?" The discussion continued, focusing on high-altitude, low-opening parachute jumps as the preferred method of insertion for SEAL teams. Tactical scenarios were proposed and debated, contingency plans outlined. Lysandra continued taking notes, occasionally glancing at the topographical map. "The last mission failed because we didn't have adequate intelligence on the compound's secondary exits," Hargrove stated flatly. "The hostages were recovered, but we lost the entire extraction team in the process." An aide leaned over and whispered something in his ear. Hargrove frowned, then looked directly at Lysandra, who was still writing in her notebook. "Maybe we should ask our quiet observer," he said loudly enough to interrupt all other conversations. The room fell silent. "What's your opinion on high-altitude drops for this terrain, Ms. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." Lysandra looked up, her pen still poised over her notebook. "Lieutenant Commander Evershaw, sir." "Lieutenant Commander," Hargrove repeated with the faintest hint of a smirk. "And do you have a call sign to go with that rank, or just opinions?" A few of the Marines chuckled. Others looked uncomfortable. Lysandra held Hargrove's gaze, her expression unchanged. When she spoke, her voice was calm and level. "Iron Viper, sir." The laughter died instantly. The room went so silent that the hum of the air conditioning became suddenly apparent. Lieutenant Winters dropped his pen. It clattered on the table with startling clarity. One of Hargrove's aides leaned forward, urgently whispering in the general's ear. The color drained from Hargrove's face. Lysandra returned to her notes as if nothing had happened, but now every eye in the room was fixed on her. Expressions ranged from disbelief to awe. A few officers subtly straightened in their seats. General Hargrove cleared his throat. "We'll continue this briefing at 1400 hours. Dismissed." Officers filed out in silence, stealing glances at Lysandra as they passed. She gathered her materials with the same methodical precision she always displayed, apparently oblivious to the stir she had caused. Lieutenant Winters attempted to approach her, but was intercepted by his superior officer, who pulled him aside with a firm grip on his arm. Lysandra caught fragments of their whispered exchange as she walked past. Classified, only survivor. Thought she was dead. She walked straight to her car, placed her notebook in the passenger seat, and drove to Naval Intelligence Headquarters. The summons from Rear Admiral Thaddeus Blackwood came before she even reached her office. Blackwood's office overlooked the bay, but the blinds were drawn. He stood with his back to the door when she entered, hands clasped behind him. "Commander," he acknowledged without turning around. "Admiral," she replied, standing at attention. He turned to face her, his expression grave. "You were supposed to maintain your cover, Commander." "With respect, sir, I didn't break protocol," she answered calmly. "He asked. I answered truthfully." Blackwood sighed, gesturing for her to sit. "Hargrove has already requested your complete file. That requires presidential authorization, which you know I can't grant without compromising the entire operation. Sir, if I might ask, how much does General Hargrove already know?" "He knows Iron Viper was the operative who extracted his son and 11 other Marines from that compound in 2019. He knows the official report listed the extraction team as KIA. What he doesn't know," Blackwood leaned forward, "is that you've been working undercover since your recovery, tracking the network that arranged that hostage situation." Lysandra nodded once, and now they're watching us, Blackwood said grimly. "The operation might be compromised. 4 years of work, Commander. 4 years of building the case against whoever sold out that mission." A brief flash of memory hit her. Darkness, gunfire, the staccato rhythm of radio static. She pushed it away. "I'll continue as directed, sir," she said. Blackwood studied her. "You always do, Commander. That's why you were chosen for this. Just be careful. Hargrove is a good Marine, but he's been carrying his son's death for 4 years. Finding out you survived when his son didn't may not sit well." "Understood, sir." She drove home in silence, her mind working through the implications of the day's events. Her cover wasn't blown, not technically. Her assignment as an intelligence analyst was real. The undercover aspect was her connection to the 2019 mission and her continued investigation into who had compromised it. The parking lot of her apartment complex was empty except for a dark sedan she didn't recognize. She parked 3 spaces away and walked past it without a glance, noting the government plates and 2 occupants in the front seats. She was being watched, but that wasn't new. Inside her apartment, she immediately sensed something was off. Nothing obvious, a chair angled slightly differently, a drawer closed not quite completely. Nothing taken, but things moved. Someone had been here, someone professional enough to avoid triggering the subtle markers she always left. Her secure phone rang at precisely 2100 hours. "Blackwood," came the Admiral's voice. "We've got movement on Scarlet Horizon. Your old friend is back." Lysandra felt her pulse quicken slightly. "Nazari?" Facial recognition picked him up at a border crossing in Turkey 3 days ago. "He's using a new name, but it's him." "He's supposed to be dead," she said flatly. "So are you, Commander," Blackwood replied. "Be at the 1400 briefing tomorrow. Things are accelerating." She slept 4 hours, as always. The dreams came, as always. Fragments of the mission, faces of the Marines she'd extracted. The weight of the general's son as she carried him through mountain terrain, his blood soaking through her uniform, the helicopter exploding against the night sky. Her own voice, steady amid chaos. "Viper to command, package secured, send extraction to secondary point." She woke at 0400, dressed, and ran her 5 miles along the empty beach. The routine anchored her. Routine was survival. The 1400 briefing had a different atmosphere. Officers entered the room with an almost tangible tension, conversations hushed. Glances directed her way, quickly averted when she looked up. General Hargrove arrived last, his demeanor noticeably altered. He was respectful, but wary, his gaze lingering on her with barely disguised suspicion. "Thank you all for returning," he began formally. "We've received new intelligence that changes our operational parameters." "Lieutenant Winters?" Winters stood, looking slightly uncomfortable. "We've confirmed that Karim Nazari, believed killed in Turkish custody in 2020, is alive and operating in the region again. He appears to be the leader of this new cell." Lysandra kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. If Nazari was alive, it confirmed her suspicions that someone high in the intelligence community had facilitated his escape and faked his death. the same someone who had likely compromised the 2019 mission. Given this development, Hargrove continued, we're accelerating plans for an extraction operation. An intelligence asset with critical information about Nazari's network has requested emergency exfiltration from the same region where the 2019 operation occurred. He paused, his gaze finding Lysandra. Commander Evershaw will provide consulting oversight for this mission. It was a challenge, not a courtesy. His eyes said what his words did not. I'm watching you. The planning session proceeded with meticulous detail. Extraction routes were analyzed, contingencies developed, resources allocated. Lysandra participated actively now, her cover of passive observer no longer tenable. Her insights were precise and practical, clearly born of experience rather than theoretical knowledge. As the session neared its end, General Hargrove outlined the final approach. We'll insert the team here. He indicated a point on the map that made Lysandra stiffen slightly. Using the Northern Ridge approach, exactly as planned in the 2019 operation. The room went quiet. Several officers exchanged uneasy glances. Sir, Commander Avery began cautiously. Given what happened last time, sometimes, Hargrove cut him off. The enemy least expects you to try the same approach twice, especially when they believe everyone who knew the details of that approach is dead. His eyes locked with Lysandra's, the challenge unmistakable. She met his gaze evenly. That approach failed once already, General. I wouldn't recommend repeating it. And how would you know that, Commander? He asked coldly. Those files are classified beyond your clearance. The room tensed as Lysandra set down her pen and straightened in her chair. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady, carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent room. Because I was there, sir. I carried your son to the extraction point. Have you ever witnessed the moment when respect is finally given to someone who deserved it all along? Tell us about a time you saw someone's true value recognized. And if these stories of quiet courage and unexpected heroes resonate with you, subscribe and join our community. General Hargrove stared at Lysandra, his face a battlefield of warring emotions. Officers around the table seemed to be holding their breath collectively, the air in the room suddenly dense with tension. Everyone out, Hargrove ordered, his voice dangerously quiet. Now. Chairs scraped against the floor as officers hurriedly gathered their materials. Lieutenant Winters hesitated, his gaze moving between Lysandra and the general. That includes you, Lieutenant, Hargrove said, without looking at him. When the door closed behind the last officer, Hargrove remained standing at the head of the table, hands pressed flat against its surface. You expect me to believe that you were part of the extraction team? His voice was controlled, but barely. That team was reported as completely lost, no survivors. The official report was incorrect, General, Lysandra replied, still seated, still calm. I was the only survivor. My son died, Hargrove said, each word precisely enunciated. Captain James Hargrove, USMC, 29 years old. He died in a medevac helicopter over the mountains while being transported back to base. Yes, sir, I was with him. Hargrove's hands curled into fists against the table. That's impossible. The extraction team was ambushed at the rendezvous point. Everyone died there. The primary team was ambushed, yes, Lysandra confirmed. I was operating separately, as a contingency. When the primary team was hit, I extracted the hostages through a secondary route. Why wasn't I told? Hargrove demanded. Why was this kept from me? That wasn't my decision, General. Lysandra's voice remained steady. I received my orders and followed them. Hargrove pushed away from the table abruptly, turning to face the window. His reflection showed a man struggling to maintain his composure. I want the truth, he said finally. All of it. Much of it is still classified, sir, even from me, Lysandra replied. What I can tell you is that after recovering from my injuries, I was assigned to the intelligence division to help identify who compromised the original mission. Compromised? Hargrove turned back to face her. The official report said it was a security breach on the ground, poor operational discipline. That was the cover story, sir. We had evidence suggesting the mission was compromised from within U.S. intelligence. The door opened before Hargrove could respond. Lieutenant Winters entered, his expression grave. General, I apologize for the interruption, but we've just received priority intelligence. It can't wait. Hargrove took a breath, visibly composing himself. What is it, Lieutenant? Sir, Facial recognition has confirmed that Karim Nazari was seen meeting with a Western man 3 days ago in Ankara. The other man has been identified as Raymond Voss, Deputy Director of Operations for Central Intelligence. Lysandra's eyes narrowed slightly, the first real change in her expression since the briefing began. "That's impossible," Hargrove said flatly. "Voss was instrumental in planning the rescue operation in 2019. "The intelligence is verified, sir. Multiple angles, clear facial matching." "Where is Voss now?" Lysandra asked. Winters looked at her, then at Hargrove, clearly unsure whether to continue with her present. "Answer the commander's question," Hargrove instructed. "Unknown, sir. He left Turkey on a private flight that same day. His official schedule shows him on leave for family reasons." Hargrove turned to Lysandra. "You don't seem surprised, Commander." "I'm not, sir. Voss has been on our watch list for 3 years. We just never had proof." "Our watch list?" Hargrove repeated. "Whose exactly?" "A special division within Naval Intelligence, sir, established specifically to investigate the 2019 mission failure." Hargrove's phone buzzed. He checked it, his frown deepening. "We need to continue this discussion, but not here," he said. "This facility may be compromised. Lieutenant, arrange secure transport to the secondary command center. Commander, Evershaw will accompany us." 20 minutes later, they were in an unmarked SUV heading away from the main base. Lysandra sat in the back seat next to Winters, Hargrove in the passenger seat up front. No one spoke until they had passed through the final checkpoint. "Start from the beginning," Hargrove said without turning around. "What really happened in 2019? Lysandra looked out the window at the passing landscape, her mind traveling back 4 years. The memories came in flashes, like lightning illuminating a night landscape. "I was inserted 3 days before the primary team, sir. Solo reconnaissance. The intelligence we had was good. 12 Marines held in a compound in the mountains, heavily guarded but not impossible. I mapped the approach routes, defensive positions, guard rotations." "You were alone? For a mission of that sensitivity?" Hargrove sounded skeptical. "That was the point, sir. Minimal footprint. If I was compromised, the primary team would still be unknown to the enemy." The SUV turned onto a less traveled road, climbing into the hills above the base. "The night of the extraction, everything went wrong," Lysandra continued. "The primary team hit resistance before they even reached the compound. Someone knew they were coming. I heard the engagement over comms and implemented the contingency plan." "Which was?" Winters asked. "I entered the compound alone from the southeast side, using a drainage tunnel the guards had overlooked. I reached the hostages and began extracting them, while the primary team was still engaged at the northern perimeter." "Alone? Against how many hostiles?" Hargrove questioned. 17 confirmed, sir. But they were focused on the primary team. I managed to get the hostages out through the tunnel and move them to the secondary extraction point, 2 kilometers east of the planned LZ. Hargrove was silent for a moment. Then, "My son? He was injured during the initial entry, sir. Bullet wound to the abdomen. I carried him the last kilometer." The SUV crested a hill, revealing a sprawling complex of low buildings partially built into the hillside. Naval Intelligence's secondary command center, rarely used except during major exercises or genuine security concerns. "He spoke about you," Lysandra said quietly as the vehicle approached the security gate. "Asked me to tell you he did his duty, that he wasn't afraid." Hargrove's head lowered slightly, the only visible reaction to her words. Inside the command center, they were escorted to a secure briefing room deep within the complex. Admiral Blackwood was already there, along with 2 senior intelligence officers Lysandra recognized, but Hargrove clearly didn't. "General," Blackwood nodded. "I understand we have a situation." "That's putting it mildly, Admiral," Hargrove replied tersely. "I've just discovered that not only did one of the operators from the 2019 mission survive, but she's been working undercover in my command. And now we have evidence that the Deputy Director of CIA Operations might be working with the very terrorist we thought was dead." "It's more complicated than that," one of the intelligence officers interjected. He was in his 60s, lean with silver hair and the bearing of someone used to authority. "I'm Director Campbell, General, Defense Intelligence Agency. This is Colonel Reeves, our Joint Operations Liaison." "With respect, Director," Hargrove said, "I don't care how complicated it is. I want answers." "And you'll get them," Campbell assured him. But first, we need to address the immediate threat. Commander Evershaw, your assessment? All eyes turned to Lysandra. She stood straighter, switching from the reserved analyst to the operator she truly was. If Nazari is working with Voss, and both of them know I'm still alive, then everyone associated with me is in danger. That includes General Hargrove, especially given the connection through his son. Why now? Hargrove asked. After 4 years? Because we're getting close, Blackwood explained. Commander Evershaw has been tracking the money trail from the 2019 hostage operation. We believe Voss was paid to compromise that mission, and he's been covering his tracks ever since. Including faking Nazari's death, Lysandra added. The evidence suggests Voss arranged for Nazari to escape Turkish custody and provided him with a new identity. Why? Winters asked. What does Voss gain? Money, primarily, Campbell said. We've identified unusual financial transactions to offshore accounts linked to shell companies we believe Voss controls. Over $12 million since 2019. Hargrove shook his head in disgust. He sold out American soldiers for money? It's not uncommon, General, Campbell said grimly. Rare at his level, but not unprecedented. The real question is what Nazari wants now. Me, Lysandra said simply. I'm the only one who can directly tie him to Voss. Everyone else who knew about their connection is dead. The 2 agents who identified Voss in Turkey, Winters realized. The ones who died last week, that wasn't an accident. No, Blackwood confirmed. It was made to look like a car accident, but the vehicle was tampered with. Hargrove's phone rang. He checked the number and frowned. It's my daughter. He stepped away from the table to take the call. While he talked, Campbell turned to Lysandra. Commander, we need to accelerate the timeline. If Nazari knows you're alive, he'll come for you and anyone connected to you. I agree, sir, but we still don't have enough evidence to move against Voss directly. Maybe we don't need it, Blackwood suggested. If we can capture Nazari alive, he might be persuaded to testify against Voss. That's a big if, Lysandra cautioned. Nazari has never been taken alive, despite multiple attempts. Hargrove returned to the table, his face pale. My daughter says there's a man watching her house. Has been all day. The room went silent. Description? Lysandra asked immediately. Middle Eastern, beard, driving a black SUV. Lysandra exchanged glances with Blackwood. It started, she said quietly. General, where is your daughter now? Campbell asked. At home with her husband and my grandchildren, San Clemente. We need to move them immediately, Blackwood decided. Colonel Reeves, arrange a safe house and security detail. Already on it, Reeves nodded, stepping away with his phone. This is my family we're talking about, Hargrove said, his voice tight with controlled fear. We understand, General, Campbell assured him, but your family isn't the only one at risk. Every person connected to the 2019 operation could be targeted. Including the families of the Marines who died, Lysandra added. We need to protect all of them. Hargrove stared at her, sudden understanding dawning. That's why you've stayed under cover all this time. You've been protecting them. Trying to, sir, but we always knew this day might come. Lieutenant Winters, who had been reviewing data on a tablet, looked up sharply. Sir, we have a problem. 3 of the families from the 2019 operation aren't responding to security check-ins. Hargrove's expression hardened. Get me their locations, now. What followed was a flurry of activity as teams were dispatched to check on the unresponsive families. Security details were assigned to the others. Lysandra moved with purpose, coordinating with intelligence officers, analyzing threat assessments. Hours passed in tense activity. Reports began filtering in. One family was safe, simply camping in an area with no cell service. Another had been found unconscious in their home, gas leak, apparently accidental, but they were alive and recovering at a hospital under guard. The third family remained unaccounted for. The Wilsons, Winters reported grimly. Staff Sergeant David Wilson was one of the Marines rescued in 2019. His wife and 10-year-old son are missing from their home in Oceanside. Signs of forced entry. Hargrove slammed his fist on the table. This ends now. We find Nazari and we take him down. Permanently. General, Campbell cautioned, we need Nazari alive if we're going to prove Voss's involvement. With respect, Director, I don't give a damn about Voss right now. There's a woman and child missing, and my family's being watched by terrorists. Find me Nazari so I can put a bullet in him." "That won't solve our problem, sir," Lysandra said quietly. "Nazari is a symptom. Voss is the disease. If we eliminate Nazari without exposing Voss, he'll simply find another weapon to use against us." Hargrove turned to her, rage barely contained. "You sound remarkably calm for someone talking about a missing child, Commander." "I assure you, I'm not calm," Lysandra replied, her voice level but with an edge that hadn't been there before. "I've spent 4 years tracking these people, watching them kill with impunity while I maintain my cover. But reacting emotionally now won't help us find the Wilsons." Before Hargrove could respond, Winters called out from a computer terminal. "I've got something." Sigint picked up a call from a burner phone near the Wilson residence to a number in Turkey. The call bounced through multiple relays, but we traced it to a location outside Ankara. "That's Nazari," Lysandra confirmed, moving to look over his shoulder. "What's the exact location?" "Coordinates are coming through now," Winters said, typing rapidly. Wait, that can't be right." "What is it?" Blackwood demanded. "The location. It's a CIA safe house." The room went silent again, the implications sinking in. "Voss," Campbell said grimly. "He's using company resources." "Can we be certain?" Hargrove asked. "Could the CIA be running an authorized operation we're not aware of?" "I checked with the Director of Central Intelligence personally before this meeting," Campbell replied. "There are no authorized CIA operations involving Nazari. Whatever Voss is doing, he's doing it off the books." Lysandra's secure phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression unchanged, but something flickering in her eyes. "I have to take this," she said, stepping away from the group. She returned moments later. "That was my source in Ankara. Nazari left Turkey 8 hours ago on a private jet. They tracked it to a private airfield in Baja California." "He's here?" Hargrove's eyes widened. "In Mexico?" "Less than 100 miles from this base," Lysandra confirmed. "And he's not alone. The Wilson family is with him." "How does your source know that?" Campbell asked sharply. "Because Nazari sent proof of life," Lysandra replied. "To me, personally." She held up her phone, showing a photo of a woman and young boy, fear evident in their eyes, a newspaper with the day's date visible beside them. "He left a message," she continued. "He'll exchange the hostages for me, in person, tonight." "Absolutely not," Blackwood said immediately. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Lysandra agreed. "But it's also our only chance to get the Wilsons back alive and capture Nazari." "You're proposing to surrender yourself to a terrorist," Hargrove stated, his tone unreadable. "I'm proposing to use his expectations against him," Lysandra corrected. "Nazari thinks I'll come alone because I've spent 4 years protecting these families. He's counting on that sense of responsibility." "And he's right," Campbell observed. "You would go alone if we let you." "But you won't," Lysandra acknowledged. "So instead, we use this opportunity. I appear to comply with his demands, drawing him out, while a strike team moves into position." "It's too risky," Blackwood argued. "If anything goes wrong, we lose you, and possibly the hostages." "Do we have another option?" Lysandra asked simply. The room fell silent again. They all knew the answer. "If we do this," Hargrove said finally, "I want Marine Recon involved, my best people." "With respect, General," Lysandra replied, "Nazari will be expecting military involvement. He'll have countermeasures in place." "What do you suggest instead?" Campbell asked. "A smaller team, myself, plus 2 operators with civilian appearance capability. We make the approach look exactly as Nazari expects. Me, surrendering myself to save innocent lives. The operators stay hidden until needed." "Who did you have in mind?" Blackwood inquired. "Lieutenant Winters is trained in covert operations," Lysandra nodded toward him. "And I'd recommend Sergeant Major Calder from Marine Special Operations." "Zephyr Calder?" Hargrove raised an eyebrow. "He retired 2 years ago." "On paper," Lysandra confirmed. "He's been working with my team since then." Hargrove's jaw tightened. "More secrets." "Necessary ones, sir." The planning proceeded with grim efficiency. Maps of the meeting location, an abandoned fish processing plant on the coast, were analyzed. Approach routes identified, contingencies established. Throughout it all, Lysandra remained focused and precise, her earlier reserve replaced by the quiet authority of a veteran operator. As the others worked through the tactical details, Hargrove approached her at the edge of the room. "You knew my son," he said, not a question. "Yes, sir. He was a good Marine, brave. Thought of his men first, even when he was wounded." Hargrove's eyes held hers. "They told me the extraction team was wiped out, that he died being transported by regular medevac personnel." "That was the cover story," Lysandra confirmed, "to protect the operation and the surviving families." "But you were there. You carried him out." "Yes, sir." Hargrove seemed to be struggling with something. Finally, he asked the question that had clearly been haunting him. "Was it quick? For my boy?" Lysandra held his gaze, her expression softening slightly for the first time. "He fought until the end, sir. Never complained, even though I know he was in pain. He talked about you and his family, asked me to tell you he did his duty." "And you never delivered that message," Hargrove noted, a hint of accusation in his tone. "I was ordered not to, General. My survival was classified at the highest level. I'm sorry." Before Hargrove could respond, Winters called out from across the room. "We have confirmation. Nazari's people have the Wilsons at the fish plant. Drone surveillance shows minimal security, just 2 vehicles and what appears to be 4 armed men." "That's not enough security for Nazari," Lysandra frowned. "He never travels with fewer than 10 men." "Maybe he's keeping a low profile since he's operating on U.S. soil," Campbell suggested. "Or it's part of the trap," Lysandra countered. "Either way, we proceed as planned. Winters and Calder will accompany me, posing as my security detail who I'll dismiss before the final approach. They'll find covered positions while I make contact." "And if Nazari has more men hidden inside the plant?" Hargrove asked. "He almost certainly does," Lysandra acknowledged. "Which is why we'll have your Marine recon team in position as our backup. But they stay out of sight unless things go wrong." The preparations continued as night fell. Lysandra changed from her Navy uniform into civilian clothes. Dark jeans, a gray t-shirt, and a lightweight black jacket that concealed a slim Kevlar vest. She strapped a knife to her ankle and accepted a small transmitter disguised as a simple bracelet. Sergeant Major Zephyr Calder arrived, a weathered man in his 40s with close-cropped hair and the relaxed alertness of a career special operator. He greeted Lysandra with a nod of familiarity and respect. "Like old times, Commander?" "Let's hope not," she replied with the ghost of a smile. "Last time we worked together, you got shot." "Details," he shrugged. "You good with the kid?" He nodded toward Winters, who was checking his equipment nearby. "He's solid, better intelligence officer than he lets on. Decent operator, too." "If you say so." Calder didn't sound convinced, but didn't argue further. The final briefing was tense but focused. Each person knew their role, the contingencies, the extraction plan. As they prepared to deploy, Admiral Blackwood pulled Lysandra aside. "Commander, I know you understand the stakes here, but I need to be clear. If you have the opportunity to capture Nazari alive, that's the priority. We need him to take down Voss." "With respect, sir, my priority is the hostages," Lysandra replied firmly. "I'll try to take Nazari alive, but not at the expense of civilian lives." Blackwood studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Understood, Commander. Good hunting." The drive to the meeting point took 40 minutes, much of it along dark coastal roads. Lysandra sat in the back seat with Calder while Winters drove. None of them spoke until they were 10 minutes out. "Recon team is in position," Winters reported, touching his earpiece. "No movement at the target site. Thermal shows approximately 8 heat signatures inside the main building." "8," Calder repeated, "plus the 4 outside makes 12. "That's more like Nazari's standard security package," Lysandra nodded. "Wireless comms check." They each verified their communications were functioning properly. "Remember," Lysandra said, "Nazari is expecting me to be alone and unarmed. He'll have people watching the approach. You two need to sell the idea that you're reluctantly letting me go in alone." "Don't worry about us," Calder assured her. "Worry about Nazari. He's not going to just let you walk back out with the hostages." "I know," she replied simply. "I'm counting on it." They parked a quarter-mile from the fish plant, out of sight beyond a small rise. The smell of salt and decaying fish carried on the night breeze. Waves crashed against the rocky shore below the plant, the sound providing natural cover for their movement. "This is where we separate," Lysandra said as they gathered their equipment. You two circle around to the U-stake positions we identified. I'll approach from the front as expected. Commander, Winters began, hesitation in his voice. Are you sure about this? Nazari has a personal vendetta against you. You captured him once before. And he escaped, she reminded him. Thanks to Voss. That's a mistake I intend to correct tonight. Calder checked his weapon one final time before concealing it under his jacket. We'll be in position before you make contact. Don't do anything heroic. Wouldn't dream of it, Sergeant Major. As the two men melted into the darkness, Lysandra stood alone for a moment, feeling the weight of the night air. 4 years of work, of waiting, of watching from the shadows while maintaining her cover. 4 years of carrying the memory of that mission and its aftermath. The memory of carrying General Hargrove's son through mountain terrain, his blood soaking through her uniform as he grew weaker, still giving her intelligence about the compound they'd escaped. The helicopter that was supposed to extract them exploding in the night sky, shot down by a missile that shouldn't have been there. Her voice steady amid the chaos. Viper to command, package secured, send extraction to secondary point. The long wait on that mountain, applying pressure to the young captain's wound, keeping him talking, keeping him alive until the second helicopter arrived. Too late for him, as it turned out. And then the orders afterward, her survival classified, her identity buried, a new mission to find whoever had betrayed them all. 4 years. And now it ended, one way or another. She began walking toward the fish plant, her steps measured and confident. The lights of the facility glowed dimly ahead, illuminating the decrepit processing building and the 2 SUVs parked outside. 4 men stood guard, their weapons clearly visible even from a distance. One of them spotted her and raised his rifle. The others immediately moved to alert positions. Lysandra raised her hands slowly, continuing to walk forward at the same steady pace. She could feel their eyes on her, their weapons tracking her movement. When she was 50 yards away, a figure emerged from the building. Even in the poor light, she recognized Karim Nazari immediately. Tall and lean, with a neatly trimmed beard and the bearing of a man accustomed to absolute authority. He had changed little in 4 years. Commander Evershaw, he called out, his accented voice carrying clearly in the night air. Or should I say, Iron Viper? I've waited a long time for this reunion. Where are the hostages, Nazari? She replied, still advancing. Safe. For now. He gestured, and 2 of his men brought out a woman and boy from the building, holding them at gunpoint. Mrs. Wilson and her son, as promised. Lysandra stopped 20 yards away. Let them go. You have me now. Nazari smiled coldly. Not quite yet. First, remove your jacket and turn around slowly. My men need to be sure you're not armed. She complied, taking off her jacket and turning in a full circle to show she carried no visible weapons. Now, come forward, alone. Lysandra walked the remaining distance until she stood just 10 feet from Nazari. From this close, she could see the scar along his jaw, the one she had given him during their last encounter. Release them, she said again. In good time, Nazari replied. First, we have matters to discuss, starting with how you managed to survive our last meeting. Skill, luck, determination. She shrugged. Take your pick. Always the professional, he smiled thinly. That's what I admired about you, even as you were ruining my operation. Such focus, such commitment. The hostages, Nazari. Yes, yes. He waved dismissively. Mrs. Wilson, you and your son may go. My men will not stop you. The guard released his grip on the woman's arm. She grabbed her son's hand and began backing away, her eyes darting between Nazari and Lysandra. It's all right, Lysandra assured her. Go. There are people waiting to help you beyond the road. As the woman and boy hurried away, Nazari's smile widened. See? I am a man of my word. Unlike your friend Voss, Lysandra replied. The smile vanished from Nazari's face. So, you know about that. I wondered. We know everything, Nazari. The money trail, the fake death certificate, the meetings in Turkey. It's over. I think not, Commander. He raised his hand, and suddenly the area was flooded with light as hidden floodlights activated. You see, while you've been watching us, we've been watching you. From the building behind him, more armed men emerged. 8, 10, 12 of them, fanning out in a semicircle. But it was the final figure that made Lysandra's blood run cold. Raymond Voss stepped into the light, a pistol in his hand and a cold smile on his face. "Hello, Commander Evershaw. I think it's time we had a long overdue conversation about the future of your investigation. What would you do if you discovered someone who saved lives was forced to hide in the shadows? Tell us about a time when you witnessed true courage go unrecognized. If this story of sacrifice and delayed justice resonates with you, please subscribe to hear how Iron Viper's mission concludes." Lysandra maintained her composure, even as she processed the presence of Raymond Voss. This changed everything, and nothing. The mission parameters remained the same: protect the hostages, capture Nazari if possible, and gather evidence against Voss. But the difficulty had just increased exponentially. "Deputy Director Voss," she acknowledged calmly. "This explains a lot." Voss stepped forward, his silver hair gleaming under the harsh floodlights. At 62, he looked every inch the distinguished intelligence official, tailored suit, confident bearing, the American flag pin on his lapel, an ironic touch given the circumstances. "Commander Evershaw," he replied, his voice carrying the polished tones of old money and Ivy League education. "Or should I say Iron Viper? You've been quite the inconvenience these past 4 years." "Just doing my job," she answered. "Unlike some." Nazari chuckled. "She has spirit, this one. Even surrounded, she shows no fear." "Did you really think we wouldn't notice your investigation?" Voss asked, ignoring Nazari's comment. "The careful inquiries, the financial traces, the surveillance of my activities. I've been watching you watch me for years." "Then you know we have everything we need," Lysandra replied. "The money transfers to your offshore accounts, your meetings with Nazari, the faked death certificate, your involvement in the 2019 mission failure. What you have is circumstantial evidence at best," Voss dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Nothing that would stand up in court, and even if it did, do you really think the agency would allow a public trial? The embarrassment would be intolerable." "This isn't about embarrassment," Lysandra said. "It's about betrayal. American soldiers died because of you." Something flickered across Voss's face. Not guilt, but annoyance at being reminded of the consequences of his actions. "Collateral damage," he said flatly. "Unavoidable in our line of work." "Tell that to Captain Hargrove's family," Lysandra replied, her voice hardening slightly. "Tell that to the Wilsons, who you just used as bait." "Speaking of bait," Nazari interjected, "I'm curious. Did you really come alone, Commander? That seems uncharacteristically careless for someone of your reputation." "You asked for me," she replied simply. "I'm here." "Yes," Nazari nodded, studying her. "But the Iron Viper, I remember, would never walk into such an obvious trap without a contingency plan." He gestured to his men, who began spreading out, scanning the darkness beyond the illuminated area. "Find her back up," he ordered. "They must be close." Voss checked his watch impatiently. "We don't have time for this, Kareem. The deal was you get her. I get the evidence she's collected. Let's conclude our business." "Always in a hurry, Americans," Nazari sighed theatrically. "Very well. Commander Evershaw, where is the evidence against Mr. Voss? The files, the recordings, whatever you've gathered?" "Secure," Lysandra replied, "and set to be released automatically if I don't return." Voss's expression tightened. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" she countered. "It seems like a basic precaution. Dead man's switch, standard procedure." "She's stalling," Voss said to Nazari. "Her backup is moving into position." "Probably," Nazari agreed. "Which is why we should move this conversation inside. Fewer variables to control out here." He gestured with his pistol toward the fish processing plant. "After you, Commander." Lysandra assessed the situation rapidly. Moving inside would put her at a tactical disadvantage, but it might also draw Nazari and Voss away from their men, giving Calder and Winters a better chance to act. The Marine Recon team was still in position as backup, but they were under orders to wait for her signal. She walked toward the building as directed, Nazari behind her, Voss following. 4 armed men accompanied them, while the others continued to secure the perimeter. The interior of the fish plant was cavernous and dim, smelling of salt and decay. Rusted processing equipment created a maze of metal and shadow. Their footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. "Far enough," Nazari said when they reached a cleared area that had once been the main processing floor. "Now, let's discuss the terms of your continued survival." I wasn't aware that was an option, Lysandra replied dryly. It might be, Voss interjected. Despite what you may think of me, Commander, I'm not in the habit of killing American operatives without good reason. Just betraying them? Voss's expression hardened. You have no idea what's really at stake here. The 2019 operation wasn't what you think it was. Enlighten me, she challenged. Those Marines weren't just hostages, Voss said. They were witnesses. They saw something they shouldn't have during a prior deployment, something that could have compromised operations worth billions. What operations? Lysandra demanded. What could possibly justify sacrificing your own people? The world runs on unofficial arrangements, Commander, Voss replied, his tone professorial. Agreements between powers that can never be acknowledged publicly. Sometimes maintaining those arrangements requires difficult decisions. He means the weapons, Nazari supplied helpfully, seeming to enjoy Voss's discomfort. The ones his government was providing to certain groups through intermediaries like me. Voss shot him a look of annoyance. That's oversimplifying a complex geopolitical strategy. No, that's admitting to treason, Lysandra corrected coldly. You arm terrorists who then use those weapons against American forces. I facilitated necessary relationships in an unstable region, Voss countered. The fact that some of those relationships occasionally conflicted with other American interests is unfortunate but unavoidable. And the $12 million in your offshore accounts, was that unavoidable too? For the first time, Voss looked genuinely angry. Do you have any idea what my counterparts in other agencies make? The Chinese, the Russians? They retire as millionaires while we're expected to live on government pensions after decades of service. So, this is about money? Lysandra's disgust was evident. American lives for a comfortable retirement? This conversation is becoming tedious, Nazari interrupted. Mr. Voss, our arrangement was clear. I help you eliminate your problem, you ensure my safe passage and continued operational freedom. And you'll get it, Voss assured him, once the commander tells us where the evidence is stored. It's not stored anywhere you can reach, Lysandra stated flatly. Nazari sighed. Then we do this the hard way. He nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward with a knife. Before the man could reach her, a single shot rang out, echoing through the cavernous space. The armed guard crumpled to the floor. Chaos erupted immediately. Lysandra dove for cover behind a rusted conveyor belt as more shots came from multiple directions. Nazari's men returned fire blindly into the shadows. Find them! Nazari shouted, taking cover himself behind a large metal tank. Voss had disappeared into the darkness of the building. From her position, Lysandra could see muzzle flashes from at least two locations, Calder and Winters, firing from carefully selected positions. The plan was working. Now she needed to isolate Nazari and Voss. Moving silently through the shadows, she circled behind the metal tank where Nazari had taken cover. He was speaking urgently into a radio, calling for his men outside to reinforce their position. Before he could finish, Lysandra struck. A swift kick sent the radio skittering across the floor. Nazari spun, raising his pistol, but she was already inside his guard, her elbow connected with his wrist, numbing his hand and loosening his grip on the weapon. He recovered quickly, dropping the gun in favor of a knife that appeared in his other hand. Just like old times, he smiled, circling her carefully. Not quite, she replied. Last time, you had backup. He lunged, the knife slashing in a practiced arc. Lysandra stepped inside the attack, deflecting his arm and driving her knee into his midsection. He grunted but didn't fall, countering with a vicious backhand that caught her across the temple. They separated, both breathing hard, assessing. You've improved, he acknowledged. You haven't, she replied. The gunfire elsewhere in the building had intensified. Shouts and running footsteps indicated the battle was spreading. Nazari attacked again, more cautiously this time. The knife feinted high, then slashed low. Lysandra blocked, countered, struck. They exchanged a rapid series of blows, neither gaining a decisive advantage. He was strong and skilled, but she was faster, more precise. An explosion rocked the building, the Marine recon team making their entrance. Nazari glanced toward the sound, momentarily distracted. Lysandra seized the opportunity, sweeping his legs and taking him to the ground hard. The knife clattered away. Before she could press her advantage, something struck her from behind. a piece of pipe wielded by Voss, who had circled back through the chaos. "Enough of this!" he snarled, raising the pipe for another blow. A single shot echoed, and Voss staggered backward, dropping the pipe. Blood spread across his expensive shirt from a wound in his shoulder. Lieutenant Winters emerged from the shadows, his weapon trained on the CIA deputy director. "Don't move," he ordered. Nazari, seizing the moment of distraction, drove his elbow into Lysandra's side and broke free of her hold. He scrambled for his fallen knife, but froze at the sound of a pistol being cocked inches from his head. "I wouldn't," Sergeant Major Calder advised calmly, his weapon steady. The fighting elsewhere in the building was dying down. The Marine recon team had neutralized most of Nazari's men. Those who survived were being secured, hands zip-tied behind their backs. Lysandra rose slowly, ignoring the throbbing pain where Voss's pipe had struck her. "It's over," she told Nazari. "Is it?" he challenged, still defiant despite his position. "Your government will never allow this to become public. Too many uncomfortable questions." "Maybe," she acknowledged, "but you won't be free to continue your operations, and neither will your partner." She glanced at Voss, who sat against a metal tank, clutching his wounded shoulder and glaring at them all. General Hargrove entered, accompanied by several Marine officers and Admiral Blackwood. He surveyed the scene with a soldier's practiced eye, noting the secured prisoners, the wounded, the positions of his people. "Situation?" he asked Calder. "Secure, sir," the sergeant major reported. 4 tangos down, 8 captured, 2 of our people with minor injuries, targets 1 and 2 in custody. He nodded toward Nazari and Voss. Hargrove approached Voss first, looking down at the wounded CIA official with thinly veiled contempt. "Deputy Director Voss," he said coldly, "you have a lot to answer for." "This is a misunderstanding, General," Voss replied, attempting to regain his composure despite the pain and the blood soaking his shirt. "I was conducting a sanctioned intelligence operation. These people have interfered with national security matters." "Save it for your tribunal," Blackwood advised, joining them. "We have recordings of everything you just said to Commander Evershaw. Your admissions about arming terrorists, compromising the 2019 mission, all of it." Voss's face drained of what little color remained. "That's impossible. We swept for devices." "Not all devices are electronic," Lysandra said quietly, touching the simple bracelet on her wrist. "Some use old-fashioned methods, microfiche, analog recordings, things your scanners wouldn't detect." "You've been too focused on high-tech solutions, Raymond," Blackwood added. "Sometimes the old ways work best." Voss sagged against the tank, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Hargrove turned his attention to Nazari. "And you, the man who held my Marines hostage, who worked with this traitor." Nazari met his gaze without flinching. "I am a businessman, General. I made a profitable arrangement with your government representative. If there was betrayal, it was not mine." "Take them both," Hargrove ordered. "Separate transport, maximum security. I want them in the brig at Pendleton within the hour." As Nazari and Voss were led away, Hargrove approached Lysandra. She stood straight despite the fatigue and pain, her expression once again the professional mask she had worn for so long. "Commander," he acknowledged, his tone formal but lacking the earlier hostility. "Well-executed operation?" "Thank you, sir. Lieutenant Winters and Sergeant Major Calder performed excellently." "As did you," he replied. Then, in a quieter voice, "You kept your promise, after all this time." She met his gaze. "Sir, you delivered my son's message, that he did his duty, that he wasn't afraid." "It was an honor to serve with him, sir," she said simply. Hargrove studied her for a long moment, then did something that shocked everyone present. He removed his cover and rendered her a crisp, formal salute. The honor was his, Commander, and mine. One by one, the other officers in the room followed suit, saluting the woman who had carried their comrade to safety, who had spent 4 years in the shadows protecting the families of the fallen, who had finally brought to justice those responsible for the betrayal. Lysandra returned the salute with perfect military precision, her face betraying no emotion except for the faintest glimmer in her eyes. The aftermath unfolded with the disciplined efficiency of a well-planned military operation. The captured terrorists were processed and transported to secure facilities. Nazari and Voss were held separately, both facing extensive questioning and eventual prosecution. The evidence Lysandra and her team had gathered over 4 years was comprehensive and damning. 3 days later, she stood in Admiral Blackwood's office at Naval Intelligence Headquarters. The blinds were open this time, revealing a clear view of the bay. "The investigation is being handled at the highest levels," Blackwood informed her. "The Director of Central Intelligence has personally assured me that Voss's actions were not sanctioned and that a full internal review is underway." "And the families?" Lysandra asked. "The ones Nazari targeted?" "All safe," Blackwood confirmed. "We've maintained protective details just in case, but the immediate threat has been neutralized." "Good." She nodded, satisfied at least with that outcome. "The question now," Blackwood continued, "is what happens with you, Commander. Sir, your cover identity is no longer viable. Your connection to the 2019 operation is now known within certain circles, but your skills and experience are too valuable to lose." "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "A new assignment," he replied. "Still classified, but no longer covert. Leading a specialized joint task force focused on identifying and countering insider threats like Voss." "A task force?" she repeated, considering the implications. "That would mean working openly with multiple agencies." "Including the Marines," Blackwood nodded. "General Hargrove has specifically requested your involvement. He wants his best people working with you." "That's quite a change from a week ago," Lysandra observed dryly. "People change when their perspective changes," Blackwood replied. "Hargrove saw you not just as the operator who tried to save his son, but as someone who spent years protecting others while remaining in the shadows. That earned his respect." "And what about the official record? My status has been listed as deceased for 4 years." "Being resurrected is complicated paperwork," Blackwood acknowledged with a small smile, "but not impossible. As far as the world will know, you were on a classified assignment following your recovery from injuries sustained during the 2019 operation. The details will remain redacted, of course." Lysandra took a moment to absorb this. After 4 years of living as a ghost, of maintaining her cover identity, the prospect of returning to her real life was both appealing and unsettling. "I'll need to think about it, sir." "Of course," Blackwood nodded. "Take a few days, but not too long. The task force needs to be operational as soon as possible." She left headquarters and drove without any particular destination in mind, eventually finding herself at the beach where she ran each morning. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sand. A few people walked along the shore, but it was mostly deserted. Lysandra removed her shoes and walked to the water's edge, letting the cold Pacific wash over her feet. 4 years of living in shadows, of carrying the weight of that mission and its aftermath. 4 years of watching from a distance, protecting the families of those who hadn't made it out, hunting those responsible for the betrayal. And now it was over. Voss would face justice. Nazari would never threaten anyone again. The families were safe. But what about her? Who was Lysandra Evershaw without the mission that had defined her existence for so long? A figure approached along the beach, General Hargrove, dressed in civilian clothes. He stopped a respectful distance away, then gestured toward the water. "Mind some company, Commander?" "Not at all, sir." They walked in silence for a while, the waves washing away their footprints almost as soon as they were made. "I owe you an apology," Hargrove said finally. "I misjudged you from the moment you entered my briefing room." "You had no way of knowing who I was, sir." "That's not what I mean," he clarified. "I saw a quiet officer taking notes and assumed she had nothing to contribute. I was dismissive and disrespectful, not because of who you were, but because of who I thought you were." Lysandra considered this. "Most people underestimate quiet observers, sir. Sometimes that's an advantage in my line of work." "Maybe," he acknowledged, "but it shouldn't be that way, not within our own ranks." They walked a bit further before he spoke again. "Blackwood tells me he's offered you the task force position." "He mentioned it," she confirmed. "Said you specifically requested my involvement." "I did," Hargrove nodded. "Not because of your connection to my son, though I'm grateful for what you did for him. I requested you because you're the best person for the job. You've spent 4 years tracking a traitor while protecting his potential victims. You understand how these people think, how they operate, and your Marines would accept me as part of their command structure?" Hargrove actually smiled at that. "Commander, after what happened at the fish plant, I think my Marines would follow you into hell itself. Word gets around. They know who Iron Viper is now. The name hung between them, no longer a secret, but a recognized call sign, earned through actions few would ever know the full extent of. "I'm not sure I want to be Iron Viper anymore," Lysandra admitted. "That identity was born from necessity, not choice." "Then be whoever you choose to be," Hargrove replied simply. "The task force needs Lysandra Evershaw, not a call sign." They reached a rocky outcropping and stopped, looking out over the endless Pacific. "He talked about you, you know," Hargrove said after a long silence. "In his letters home. Not by name, of course, but he mentioned a new training officer who pushed them harder than anyone else, who expected more and got it. He said she could outrun, outshoot, and outthink most of the men, but never made a show of it, just quietly set the standard and expected everyone to meet it." Lysandra felt a tightness in her throat. He was a good Marine, they all were. Yes, Hargrove agreed quietly. They were. He reached into his pocket and withdrew something that caught the fading sunlight, a set of dog tags. "These were my sons," he said, holding them out to her. "I've carried them since they were returned to me. I'd like you to have one." "Sir, I couldn't—" "Please," he interrupted gently. "He would want you to have it. You earned it that night, carrying him out when everyone else was lost." After a moment's hesitation, she accepted one of the tags. The metal was worn smooth from years of being carried, the engraved information still clearly visible. Hargrove, James A., Capt. USMC. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly, closing her hand around it. "No, Commander," he replied. "Thank you for everything you did then and everything you've done since." They stood in silence as the sun sank toward the horizon, casting the world in shades of gold and amber. "The briefing for the new task force is Monday at 0800, Hargrove said finally. "If you decide to accept the position, we'd be honored to have you there." "I'll consider it, sir." He nodded, satisfied, and began walking back toward the parking area. After a few steps, he turned back. "Oh, and Commander, if you do join us, I promise not to ask for your call sign in front of everyone." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I appreciate that, sir." After he left, Lysandra remained by the water, watching as the last light faded from the sky. She opened her hand and looked at the dog tag resting in her palm, the name catching the final rays of sunset. 4 days later, Commander Lysandra Evershaw walked into the Joint Operations Center at Camp Pendleton, the same room where a week earlier she had sat quietly taking notes while General Hargrove led a briefing, the same room where she had revealed her identity with 2 simple words, Iron Viper. This time, she didn't take a seat along the wall. This time, officers stood as she entered, respect evident in their posture and expressions. General Hargrove was already there, along with Admiral Blackwood and representatives from various intelligence and military branches. "Commander Evershaw," Hargrove greeted her formally. "Thank you for joining us." "Thank you for the invitation, sir," she replied. "Before we begin," he continued, "I believe proper introductions are in order." He turned to address the assembled officers. "For those who haven't had the privilege, this is Commander Lysandra Evershaw, United States Navy. She will be co-leading our new joint task force on counterintelligence and internal security." He paused, his eyes meeting hers briefly. "Some of you may know the commander by reputation or by her former call sign. Today, that's not important. What matters is that she brings unparalleled experience and expertise to our mission. I expect each of you to provide her with your full cooperation and support." Lysandra surveyed the room. The faces that had once looked past her now focused intently on her every word and gesture. Lieutenant Winters sat near the front, a small smile of satisfaction on his face. Sergeant Major Calder lounged against the wall where she had once sat, nodding almost imperceptibly when their eyes met. "Thank you, General," she said, stepping forward. "I appreciate the introduction, but I'd prefer to let my work speak for itself. We have a lot to cover this morning, so let's begin." She moved to the head of the table with natural authority, no longer the silent observer, but the leader everyone now recognized her to be. Around her neck, visible above her uniform collar, hung a single dog tag on a simple chain. As she began the briefing, laying out the parameters of their new mission with precision and clarity, General Hargrove watched with quiet approval. The room responded to her leadership with attentive respect, not because of a dramatic revelation or a famous call sign, but because they recognized something essential in her character that had been there all along, waiting for the right moment to be seen. They had always needed someone like Commander Evershaw. They just hadn't known it until now. Have you ever witnessed someone quietly carrying the weight of responsibility without recognition? Someone whose true value was only appreciated when circumstances finally revealed their quiet strength? Share your experiences with those unsung heroes in your life. And if you believe that true courage often walks without fanfare, subscribe to hear more stories of exceptional character revealed in extraordinary circumstances.